On April 10, 2001, at approximately 8:45 a.m., an explosion erupted in Scottsdale, Arizona. It shook an entire neighborhood and was heard by many from miles away. First responders arrived and attempted to put out the raging fire that had engulfed the entire home, which burned to the ground in a matter of minutes. Firefighters and police officers claimed they heard more explosions and popping even after they had arrived. The first firefighter on the scene immediately knew there were people inside the home. He knew the smell of burning flesh. It was something he couldn't forget. After the fire was put out, investigators found 3 members of the Fisher family amongst the ash: 10-year-old Brittany, 13-year-old Bobby, and 38-year-old Mary Fisher. Robert Fisher, the father and husband of the deceased, was missing, and so was his wife's SUV. Investigators were left with more questions than answers. It's been over 20 years, and investigators are still trying to answer those same questions. What happened to the Fisher family, and where is Robert William Fisher? To find out where Robert Fisher could be, first we have to ask, who was Robert Fisher? According to family members and friends, Robert was a model citizen and a faithful Christian. Many theorized initially that he had been kidnapped or framed for his family's murder. According to investigators, all the evidence points to one man, and one man only, Robert Fisher. However, his family was still in disbelief. On the outside, Robert was an outstanding husband, father, and employee. But once authorities started to dig a little deeper, the truth about Robert Fisher began to surface. Robert William Fisher was born on April 13, 1961, in Brooklyn, New York. Robert's parents divorced in 1976 when he was just 15 years old. This had a negative impact on his 2 sisters and him, who went to live with their father. He later went on to enlist in the U.S. Navy and even attempted to become a SEAL, but fell short. Instead, he married Mary Cooper and went on to become a fireman in San Diego. While working as a firefighter, he injured his back so severely that it required surgery. As the main source of income for the family, Robert was worried he wouldn't be able to work again afterwards. He prepared for the worst outcome of the surgery for years by paying off a car and getting the family's finances in order. Robert was able to regain his mobility after the surgery and went into the medical field, working as a cardiac technician, respiratory technician, and most recently, a nurse at the Mayo Clinic. According to FBI Special Agent Caldwell, Robert was hard to get along with and wanted control over every detail in his life, down to the decorations on the family's walls. Robert especially loved having control over the lives of the animals he hunted. Through interviews of the people that knew him, it became clear that Robert didn't love to hunt for sport. He thoroughly enjoyed the act of killing. Friends and associates stopped hunting with Robert because his actions were so strange. This is a story that stuck out to investigators. Robert and friends had just killed an elk and were in the process of gutting it. All of a sudden, they noticed Robert smearing the blood of the elk all over himself. In a separate incident several years before the murders, Robert shot and killed a stray pit bull, claiming that it attacked his dog Blue. Authorities believed that he orchestrated the attack, just so he could kill the dog. Let's dive into the investigation and what authorities believe so far. Robert and Mary Fisher got into an argument around 10 p.m. the night before the explosion. Robert kills his children first, knowing Mary would put up the most fight. He slashes the throats of his children, almost decapitating them entirely from ear to ear. Next, he cuts the throat of his wife, just before shooting her in the back of the head. Robert then turns on the gas furnace and breaks the handle off. As the house fills with highly flammable gas, Robert pours accelerant down a long hallway and places a lit candle in the center of it. He packs some clothes and leaves. 42 minutes later, he's seen on CCTV footage at the nearest ATM, withdrawing $280 in cash. He has the family's dog, Blue, with him. The dog his sister would later claim that he loved more than his own family. After this, he drives off in his wife's SUV and is never seen or heard from again. Robert could have used his own vehicle, but a loud diesel truck isn't capable of sneaking around. While Robert has never officially been seen again, there have been some sightings over the years. The first sighting was on the Mogollon Rim, roughly 2 hours from Scottsdale. A woman and her husband were on a forested road driving south and claimed to have seen Robert walking alongside the road. This unfortunately wasn't reported until later, when the trail had run cold. But it did coincide with another sighting in the town of Rye, and whoever they saw had to have traveled through Rye to cross paths with them. If these sightings are factual, it introduces a new theory. Robert has a girlfriend. A bartender at the Rye Diner recalled a couple coming in. The man immediately ordered a drink from the bar, and the woman booked it to the restroom. The man then stepped away from the bar and stood in front of a fireplace, concealing his face from everyone in the entire restaurant. After the woman exited the restroom, the bartender claimed that they appeared to be arguing. Things get even more strange. The following night, a family in Rye called investigators. A woman had rung their doorbell and said her boyfriend just dumped her after an argument they had, and she needed to call a cab. The description of this woman matched the description from the Rye bartender. Investigators have never confirmed the girlfriend theory, but Robert's been unfaithful to his wife at least once before. The Fishers' pastor, Steve Daniels, described them as, quote, solid pillar members of the church, and that they had been for a number of years. Stephen said, quote, we have no reason to believe that there was any issues taking place in that family, but that was a lie, because the church knew about Robert's affair. He had confided in them about it. In turn, they told him to confide in his wife. After his back surgery, he went to a masseuse and fell into temptation, according to his sister. He also fell into a urinary tract disease from the affair. Mary and Robert separated for a while, but ultimately reconciled through counseling through the church. Although their marriage was salvaged, it was hanging on by a thread. According to one of the Fishers' former neighbors, the couple fought on a daily basis. Robert never rose his voice, but Mary would scream at the top of her lungs about how worthless her husband was and how she could have done better. When the fights got too bad, Robert would take a long weekend off, or more, and just disappear, presumably camping with his dog. Mary would call Robert's mother often, confiding in her how hard it was to please her son. His mother said it was the same way with Robert's father, whom she had divorced. She told Mary she had to be firm with Robert and basically just deal with it. Maybe Mary didn't want to deal with it. Maybe she finally had enough and wanted a divorce, and Robert just couldn't handle it. 10 days after the explosion, on April 20th, 2001, a man spotted Mary's missing SUV while camping in the Tonto National Forest. The man drove to a gas station and called someone in Mesa, who in turn notified authorities. Investigators arrived on the scene and confirmed it was Mary's missing Toyota 4Runner. The vehicle had been abandoned there for 3 to 5 days, and guarding it was the family's dog, Blue. Investigators camped out in a large group because there wasn't enough motel rooms to go around. For 3 days, they combed the area for him. They even went as far as searching 3 caves nearby with spelunkers, cadaver dogs, and cameras. Robert wasn't in any of the 3 caves, but it's possible he could have been hiding in one of the 30 caves that existed within a quarter mile. Mary's car had been thoroughly cleaned. The only evidence left behind was a single fingerprint on a coffee cup belonging to Robert, and some DNA on a hat. Heavy rain and snowfall cut the search short. Why did Robert leave Blue behind? Why did he take him with him in the first place? And why didn't Blue follow him? What did Robert do after he abandoned his vehicle? Did he crawl into the depths of a nearby cave and take his own life where it wouldn't be heard by another soul? Or did he walk away and go into hiding by adopting a new identity? Acquiring a new identity requires a lot of money, planning, and execution, whether it's done legally or illegally. Some people think Robert wasn't capable of it. A more likely case is that Robert is still out there in the wilderness, living off the land. He was described as an excellent outdoorsman that could survive off little resources. Investigators claimed that the Scottsdale SWAT thoroughly searched the Tonto National Forest. The reality is, they only did so in a square mile around the abandoned vehicle. The entire forest is the 5th largest in the US, covering over 2.8 million acres of land. If Robert wanted to disappear in that forest, he could do so easily. Tips from all over the country were sent to authorities every single day. Most of them were bogus lookalikes. Robert was an average-looking man with few distinctive qualities. The only thing that made him stand out was his sharp nose and the way he walked due to his back surgery. In June of 2009, a tourist in Guatemala gave detectives a lead. They had been visiting the country and doing what any tourists do, taking photos of themselves. Behind them, a man accidentally entered the shot. He approached the tourist and said, "Are you taking pictures of me? Give me your camera." He then said, "I've killed before and I'll kill again." These photos have never been released by the FBI. Investigators claim the photo does look similar to him, and that they sent a team out to track down the unknown individual. but he couldn't be found. In August of 2001, a man claiming to be Robert Fisher called into America's Most Wanted tip line a week after an episode on him aired. He stated, quote, "I'm Robert Fisher, and I'm glad I killed the bitch. You'll never find me," and hung up. Authorities couldn't trace the call. In February of 2004, a lead came in all the way up in White Rock, Canada. Robert's former neighbor, Wade, drove to the jail the mystery man was being held. They pretended to book him into the jail so he could be face to face with this so-called Robert Fisher and identify him once and for all. Wade saw the man walk down a hallway and stand with his lawyer and girlfriend. He heard him speak. As the man scanned the room, his eyes landed on Wade. Wade said, quote, "When he looked at me and I heard his voice, I knew it was him. He stopped. He did that little look around the room and he scanned. He came back to me. And he sort of got this instant look on his face like, what the hell are you doing here? I was looking at him like, oh my God, that's him. That's my old neighbor. I see this guy recognized me. I know he recognized me. He stared at me for a good 30 seconds before his lawyer had to interrupt him and get his attention off of me. He told the officers, that's him. That's Robert Fisher. Don't let him go." Wade got into his car and went home. The mystery man's similarities to Robert were striking. A scar on his back, a missing left bicuspid tooth, a gap in his teeth. They had the same voice, build, body language, and mannerisms, according to Wade. But there was one major issue. The fingerprints didn't match. Wade theorizes that the mystery man was in fact Robert Fisher and had altered his fingerprints to avoid detection. Investigators believe it was a mistake. The man was identified as someone else, and his own mother came to the jail to identify him as her son. It was not Robert Fisher. A psychic that was interviewed for a documentary in 2011 predicted that Robert Fisher would be apprehended in August of 2013. She was wrong. It's possible that Robert is dead in some national forest, his bones being gnawed and picked at by wild animals. It's possible that he's blending in somewhere, working jobs for cash, and restarting his life as someone new. We don't know, and we may never know. The FBI is offering up to $100,000 for information leading directly to the arrest of Robert William Fisher. This is their official description of him. Fisher is physically fit, is an avid outdoorsman and fisherman. He has a noticeable gold crown on his upper left bicuspid tooth. He may walk with an exaggerated erect posture and his chest pushed out due to a lower back injury. Fisher is known to chew tobacco heavily, to be in possession of several weapons, including a high-powered rifle. To this day, Robert is still amongst the FBI's top 10 most wanted. You can send an anonymous tip to FBI Phoenix at 602-279-5511 or the Scottsdale Police Department at 480-312-5000.